This is a Strandbeest. It's a walking skeleton that's powered only by the wind, created by Dutch inventor Theo Janssen. There are no motors and no electronics, and they are made of the weirdest materials.
Tape and glue and snot and screws, and gets that force to transfer is really thrilling to me.
I mean, now it's on The Simpsons.
The Strandbeest.
Is this science or garbage?
Dutch art.
But how do they actually work? And why did he build them? Well, it all started 34 years ago.
I promised myself to spend 1 year on the tubes. That was in 1990. That got totally out of hand.
A little.
Now, Janssen's thinking bigger.
I hope that these animals can survive all the circumstances here on the beach, like the storms and the water and the sand. Hopefully at the end of my life, it's that far and that they can live on their own. That's the idea. A new specimen on Earth.
But to achieve this goal, the base had to overcome 6 major challenges. The first is that they had to support their own weight.
In the beginning, I had lots of trouble with the connections, the joints. I used sellotape to connect them. It all broke, you know.
As a result, all the base could do was lie on its back and move its legs a little.
Yeah, I can imagine the first thing I would do is stop using tape. Like, tape is not a long-term solution.
Right, yeah, no, it was very short-term. You can look at some of the pictures, it's just like, you see some tubes, but you mostly see tape everywhere trying to hold it together. And so he too realizes this very quickly. So the first fix to this challenge is like using zip ties. Much more elegant, much more clean, way stronger.
Janssen restricted himself to only a few basic materials. Still, 5 more hurdles remained, the next of which was getting the Beast to walk smoothly. To do this, Janssen realized that the path traced out by their foot as it moves is extremely important, because if that's wonky and all over the place, the Beast will likely lose its balance. But if instead it traces out a mostly flat surface along the bottom, well, then the Beast could keep its balance and walk properly. Now, you can get drastically different footpaths by changing the proportions of these tubes and where they're placed. Some footpaths might be wonky, others a bit flat, or just about anything in between. But how do you find the right one? That's what Janssen wanted to find out. So in 1990, he wrote a computer program that could compute the footpath for any given combination of proportions. Now, you might think, just have the computer go over trillions of possible options and then pick the best one. But that doesn't work.
Then my computer would be on for 100,000 years, yeah. So that's why I use this evolution method where you can come there a lot faster.
So, Janssen ran a simulation that started with 1,500 different combinations of proportions, resulting in 1,500 different footpaths. Now, none of these curves had a great flat surface at the bottom, but some were slightly more flat than others. Those combinations would then reproduce and multiply with slight changes into 1,500 new combinations. And this evolutionary process went on for months, day and night, until by the end of it, these 13 holy numbers came out. That's how he describes it. They describe the proportions and placements of all tubes, so that when you put them all together and start rotating the crankshaft right here, they give you this footpath. This is the path that just about every Strandbeest has traced out for over 30 years. If you then connect different legs together where each leg is out of phase of the others by 120 degrees, then you get this continuous, smooth walk. And those 13 holy numbers, well, I guess you could see that as the genetic code of the Strandbeests.
And the reason you offset them by 120 degrees is so that there's always feet that are in contact with the ground, which gives you this smooth ride.
And getting this right is important. In 2016, my friend and original Mythbuster Adam Savage built his own pedal-powered Strandbeest.
I found the movement of his robots so compelling because it felt like looking at a different kind of nature. There's a tremendous amount of force on the axle, and that he builds all this stuff with like tape and glue and snot and screws and gets that force to transfer is really thrilling to me. To be honest, when I built one at the Exploratorium in their parking lot over 3 days, and for 2 days I was getting it wrong.
Adam tried all kinds of fixes to get it to walk, but without success.
But I remember building the Strandbeest and hearing this guy talking about something I was getting wrong, and I'm tuning him out, tuning him out, tuning him out. And then at 4 o'clock between days 2 and 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and I was like, oh, that guy's right. And he saw it on the invitation to the build. He saw that I had missed in my translation of a drawing. I had missed one of the linkages, and that I had this length of the center triangle linkage off, and I needed to push it out. And it was like night and day. I came in, fixed that thing, cut all the way up the middle of this metal bod, extended everything by an inch, and all of a sudden it just walked. It was like, when you get it right, that thing just moves.
Yes, yes! Woo, woo!
Did you ever give that guy a heads up and be like, hey, yeah?
I did, but not till the end of the day.
Okay.
I didn't want to give him the satisfaction while I was still working. That's my ego.
But Adam's Beest lived in an exhibition. Jansson's Beasts, on the other hand, spend the entire summer on the beach, where they're exposed to the elements. So all the remaining hurdles are about surviving and conquering their natural habitat. One major challenge is dealing with sand.
And the sand is very fluffy, so it's very easy for them to get stuck, especially if it's a stick. It would just bury itself in, and then it cannot move, so it can't survive.
To prevent this from happening, the Beasts evolved feet specifically adapted to the beach.
What you can immediately see is that it's not just a stick that's poking into the ground. Instead, you've got this large sort of surface area. Then it's much easier for it to stay on top of the sand.
But they also fulfill a less obvious function.
You've got these wires here, and what this does, together with the larger surface area, is it provides a lot more contact time where the foot is basically in touch with the ground. So when this foot is in touch with the ground, it can get taken over by another and taken over by another. And as a result, you get this very smooth ride, which is what you're looking for to save the structure of the Strandbeest and not put too much pressure on it.
Because I built one with tennis shoes. Teo explained to me that having a couple of inches of play in the linkage between the final ankle and the tennis shoe was mission critical to allow that foot to stay in place while the linkage got the other foot up and ready to drop. And that's apparently how our walking works, is, you know, it's not a straight like 1, 2, 3 like a robot. There is this swing.
But the Beasts aren't always walking. I mean, sometimes they're tied up in the same place for days or weeks. And then sand poses another major threat.
If you leave a structure like this on the beach, you come back after 3 weeks and it's totally covered with sand. To avoid that, I thought maybe if they just lift up a little bit, the sand goes under there and they don't get buried.
This is how flying Strandbeests evolved. But the Beasts also face more violent threats, like storms. So how can they increase their odds of survival during these times? Well, for regular animals, it's typically easier to survive harsh conditions by banding together, and the same holds true for Strandbeests.
And the idea behind this animal was that they would survive the storm maybe better holding each other. Because if you see an individual, like over there, if you put it on the beach, it blows over very easy. So as an individual, they wouldn't survive. But as a group holding each other, they are stronger in strong winds.
This also allows for a different type of Strandbeest.
One that can be pulled. And the big idea is actually that this would be pulled by the other Strandbeests. Now, I asked Theo if I can pull it, and he said yes. So we can grab it right here. There's some hand markings. And then now I should be the motor, and this crawler should come behind me. So let's see. Oh man, this is cool. This is very cool. Walking a Strandbeest up a Dutch beach. What an epic job.
Strandbeests are in a never-ending battle against the elements, but they can help each other by working together. Not too long ago, I was in an endless battle myself with spam callers. And fortunately for me, today's sponsor Incogni is helping me in this fight. See, there are data brokers out there that collect all kinds of data on you, like your name, phone number, email address, and even your social security number. And then they sell all of this information on the open market. And that's why you can get spam calls and emails from people that you've never even given your information to. Well, Incogni fights the data brokers. You just give them permission, and then they'll figure out who has your data, which laws apply, and then send each broker a letter with all the correct legal terms requesting that your information be removed. To see just how bad the problem is, here's the work Incogni has done for me so far. Back in September, they had filed 192 requests. Now they've filed 260, which in total has saved me over 160 hours of work. So to try Incogni and fight the data brokers, visit incogni.com/Veritasium. You can click the link in the description or scan this QR code. And when you do, make sure to use the code Veritasium to get 60% off your annual subscription. So head over to incogni.com/Veritasium to get started. I want to thank Incogni for sponsoring this part of the video, and now back to Strandbeests. But if too much wind is a problem, too little is as well.
So right now you can actually see one of the current fatal flaws of the Strandbeests. They walk when there's wind, but as soon as the wind dies down, the animal basically dies down as well. And so this is one of the challenges that Theo is actually trying to solve right now. Ah, there it goes again.
This is similar to a challenge that Life 2 has faced. See, you can't always rely on the currents of the wind or water to take you where you need to go. So what you want is to stock up on energy when it's plentiful, and then use it later when you need it. So you need two things: a way to store energy, and muscles that can use this stored energy. Now, to collect energy, you've got this sail, which is moved by the wind. And as it moves, it turns this crankshaft, which then pushes this piston here, and it can store pressurized air in this plastic bottle.
Just like a bicycle pump.
Do you know sort of what pressures it can go up to?
It went up to 5 yesterday, so quite a pressure. Wow. They explode when they're 10 bars, yeah. Well, once I had a bottle and there was a piston in there, and it flew just next to my ear through the window on the back, so it broke the window. So that was quite a happening. Yeah.
Wow. Holy, that's lucky.
Sure.
That's a close call.
So now that you have a way to store energy, you just need a way to use it.
And if you connect the pressure with a pump like this jumps out. So you have a sort of muscle. A muscle is nothing but an object which becomes longer or shorter on commands. So we have pulling muscles, and the Strandbeests, they have pushing muscles.
This has allowed some Strandbeests to crawl slightly, others to walk by pushing themselves along, and one to wag its tails. One thing you might notice is that with each challenge, the Strandbeests become more and more like real animals. It's as if their process is mimicking life and following a similar evolutionary pattern. And in a way, this is true, because they have to overcome many of the same challenges that animals have had to. And as life evolved, it became more and more aware of its surroundings. And in at least one case, it became conscious and self-aware. But right now, there is still one big challenge the beasts have to overcome.
Because they are blind and deaf, they don't hear where the sea is. So imagine that you're blind and deaf, you can only feel around somehow.
So one of the challenges that the Strandbeests run into is that they're walking along the water. And if they accidentally go in the wrong direction, because they are being carried by the wind, then they could end up in the water, and that would be disastrous. So to fix that, Theo has been working on a system that can actually sense when it's touching the water, and then hopefully with a connection of brain cells and muscles, it can then course correct to go away from the water back onto the beach.
And of course, it's important to know that you're close to the sea, right? That's why I have a water feeler here. Well, great. Can you hold it here? It goes over the ground about this height, and it sucks in air all the time. And as soon as it comes into the sea, it swallows the water and feels the resistance of the water. It still doesn't work. Well, I must regret. Oh, now it's working! So happy.
But those senses are only useful if you can process those inputs, make a decision on what to do, and then issue that to your muscles. Like when you walk into the water, you should be able to use your muscles to correct course. So what you need is a nervous system, a sort of brain, if you will.
This is a nerve cell. If I take the top off, and if I blow air in here, the air goes in here and comes out of here. So this is a connection. But if I push in this piston here, it's blocked. So in fact, what you see here is only a crancher, only a valve. Open, close, right? Now I'm going to operate that crancher with air. So if I blow air in here, this closes and no air comes out of here. If you see this as the output and this is the input, the output is opposite from the input. In other words, you can switch zeros and ones just like in a computer. So what you see here is the beginning of the brain of the Strandbeests.
Do you have an idea how many brain cells you'd need to be able to make that work? So the animal walks into the water and then is able to turn around?
20, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. It's not very complicated.
Yeah.
The only thing is here on the beach, everything is complicated because sand creeps in everything. And so it's, it's not an easy thing, no.
Over time, the beasts also slowly degrade. They lose their color and parts might break off. On the scale of the global microplastic pollution problem, this effect is small, but it's certainly not helping. Fortunately though, almost all parts of the Strandbeests are reused, sold as fossils, or they end up in the graveyard. It's crazy to think that all of this has been made possible by the obsession of one guy, tinkering away year after year. But why did he do it? During the late 1980s, it was becoming clear that rising levels of carbon dioxide would warm the planet, and therefore sea levels would rise by as much as 2.2 meters by 2100. And about a third of Jansson's home country, the Netherlands, lies below the current sea level. So rising sea levels pose a clear and present threat. So Johnston came up with a solution. He imagined this sort of walking skeleton on the beach. It would be powered by the wind and it would kick up sand as it walked. Then this sand would blow to the dunes, heightening them and hence protecting the Netherlands from the rising sea levels. He published this idea in the Volkskrant and called these skeletons Strandbeests.
I don't speak Dutch. Strandbeest. Is it the beach beast? Like, what is that?
Yeah, perfect. It's the beach beast.
This is such a wacky idea.
I know.
Who comes up with that?
Theo Janssen.
What started as an article in a newspaper turned into much more, to the point where it's basically defined Jansson's life. So you might ask, is it still really about protecting the Netherlands? And the answer is no, not really. It's about a much more human need that most of us have, the desire to be remembered after we're gone. I mean, it's ominous to imagine that we'll die and be forgotten someday, so a lot of us go to great lengths to avoid this by having kids, donating large sums of money to get a building named after you, or writing a book. these sorts of ideas. For Johnston, it's making Strandbeests. And when they fulfill their final goal of living independently on the beach, then, he wrote, I can die with peace of mind.
The only thing is, I don't have millions of years. That's the problem a bit. But maybe I can hypnotize some young people around here. There were some people who were really very nice and they helped me a lot. So I might be able to factor with the Strandbeest virus.
Because people all over the world are actually using this as well. So like the virus is spreading in a way, or whatever you want to call it.
Thousands of people all over the world are incorporating his 13 holy numbers into their own designs. From miniature Strandbeests to ones you can ride, to a walking bicycle. The genetic code of the beasts is spreading all over the world.
He wants everyone to build one of these. But I don't think he's got any ulterior motive except that he likes seeing those things go. And when he makes them go, he has a set of rules and restrictions, but he doesn't place those same restrictions on anyone else. I think that's really beautiful.
And who knows, perhaps one day they'll achieve that ultimate goal. A new species on Earth, roaming the world's beaches, kicking up sand all along, and maybe even protecting some coastlines from rising sea levels.
It's Strandbeest striding through the sand, legs moving like a marching band. Strandbeest, Strandbeest, voices chant and never cease. Strandbeest, Strandbeest, marching to the rhythm's beat.